Welcome to another episode of the I'm F.I.N.E. podcast, where a couple of knuckle-dragging veterans unpack the world of mental health as unprofessionally and informally as possible. I am Eric Peterson.
And I'm Brad Stosiek.
And today's episode is all about having tough conversations. We're going to talk about why having tough conversations is so difficult, how they're related to mental health, how to prepare for them, have them, and what you can do afterwards. And we're going to do that with our friend and host of the Mental Health Monday episodes, Melanie McCummiskey. So sit back and relax as we do our best to take you from being freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional to truly being fine about having tough conversations.
Welcome to the I'm F.I.N.E. podcast with your freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional hosts, Eric Peterson and Brad Stosiek.
I stopped for a second because I was proud of myself because I was like, I think I said it right.
You did.
Did I?
Yep.
Fuck yeah.
Good
Knew
job.
it. Yeah. Thank you. Peterson. Anyway, okay. So as I was saying, I feel like we got all the bullshit out of the way already.
Yeah.
And so now we're just going to sit here and like not have anything to say.
Nope.
Well, just wrap it up.
Anyway.
It's good to have you back in here, Mel.
Yes.
How are you?
Good. I'm excited to be here. It was cold today.
Holy shit. Yeah.
I still walked 3 miles today, guys.
How many?
3, 4-ish.
Using hand warmers or anything?
In that cold with that wind.
Oh my God. Yeah. It was
Oh.
been
I mean, I
windy
worked-
as shit.
I wore gloves and a hat and stuff, but I didn't like...
You are training for the Appalachian Trail, buddy.
Mhm.
Fuck it.
I lost my man boobie, we now I'm going.
We need to start talking about that again.
Now it's real. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. You got
Yeah.
to start planning.
I know.
You know what I mean?
I'm so
like, we
bad
could
at
do it.
that.
We could figure it out.
I think we could.
Yeah, but you're doing great, man.
Thanks, dude.
How do you guys feel getting into the holiday season? Yeah. Yeah. It's like,
I don't know. Every year my kids, I always play like pretend to be the Grinch, and every year they're like, "Oh, Dad's the Grinch," but like I kind of ended this year.
yeah.
I don't know. Like, yeah.
It takes me a little while to get into the
It feels
season.
less Christmassy this year. So I don't know. It's taken a little bit to get there.
Yeah. I don't know why that is too. I kind of feel like part of it's because it's an election year. I mean that not like in a joking way. Like we're all
Yeah.
just getting over this incredibly emotional situation. Everybody's
Yeah.
like fucking tired. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and then the election year, right after the election, you have Thanksgiving. So now you're at like a family gathering with some family members who might not agree with your political beliefs. So that's fucking exhausting. Like,
Yeah.
I think that could be problematic for sure. So Brad, would you mind bringing up the sources for this episode, please?
Yeah. Let's talk about mentalhealth.com, samhsa.gov, headstogether.org, premiumhealth.com, and clevelandclinic.org. Oh, I'm sorry. And 5timesminority.com.
Very good.
Thank you.
And that's kind of why we came up with the idea for this one to be about having tough conversations. I think when you're in the military, you get lots of experience having tough conversations, probably like every fucking day. If
Right.
you are in a relationship, probably getting used to having tough conversations. I think that too, like I mentioned with Thanksgiving, my family on my dad's side, pretty, like I said, like leave it to Beavery, but there are a couple of people in the group that are on completely opposing sides of the spectrum politically.
Okay. That's
So
always
it's like,
fun.
it's relaxed, but you're always like, is it gonna happen? But like, for the most part, it seems like everybody gets along. But I've never heard them have a tough conversation. I've never heard one of them say something that would be pretty offensive or triggering to the other person. But it's still important.
Guess what? You should say challenge accepted, and you should start something next year.
And just come in like Alex Jones talking
Yeah.
about turning the
Yeah.
frogs gay.
Just do
Yeah.
it. Just
Hell
do
yeah.
it.
Yep.
Just wait
I
till
gotta
next
balance
year.
it out.
Just wait till next year. Give them the year to cool down a little bit,
So
and then go in there guns a-blazing next year, bro.
I could do that. I could definitely do that. What are some of the toughest conversations you guys feel like you've ever had to have in the military?
Oh God. Because I smiled in a picture.
What do you mean?
I smiled in a picture that I had to wear my dress outfit, like a dress uniform
Yeah.
that was going up on a board in a in our unit, and I just had like a little and I got fucking destroyed.
What was the tough conversation?
Oh, I guess it was only one-sided.
Oh. Like I got fucked up, and then they smoked me. Like that's what happened.
No, I forgot you said the conversation part. I missed that part. I thought you said military and tough, and then I was like, oh man.
You went back.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Mel,
Oh.
can you think of a tough conversation you had in the military?
The first one that comes to mind is actually when I was in AIT. I was at Fort Leonard Wood, and it was like my first time getting like the pass to go do something after like you get to a certain point.
Yeah.
But you have to stay with your battle buddy.
Yep.
I got separated from mine, and I knew I had to go back and like walk in and tell the drill sergeant, it's like, yeah, I don't have my battle buddy. And there was this one drill sergeant that, he terrified me. He was like 5'2", Drill Sergeant Pacheco, absolutely terrifying.
5'2".
Like, yes, like
Nice.
big muscles,
Yep.
just Hispanic, crazy eyes. And it was the whole walk back knowing that I had to have this conversation about how I got separated, and like my heart's like beating out of my chest. I'm like, I'm in so much fucking trouble. Like, and I did. I got in so much trouble for getting separated. And like, yeah, it wasn't fun. That's the first one that comes to mind.
I think it wasn't that I had so many in the military in comparison to like the State Department, DOD type stuff. And I think that's because there were so many alpha mentalities, which can create just a lot of conflict, I think, sometimes in environments like that. And I remember at one point I was with the State Department, and I was on an advanced team. So the advanced team, it was like we'd work in two teams, and the advanced team would go ahead of the main team and like secure a building, make sure shit was good, blah, blah, blah. And then the next team would like come out there. So on my advanced team, our shift lead, who was essentially the supervisor of the whole team, was like, I don't know, he might have been like, wasn't a Vietnam vet, but he was like old, and he'd never been to Iraq, never been to Afghanistan. And he was our shift lead in Iraq. And his tactics and everything were not updated. Like they were very much, like very antiquated. And in an environment like that, you're putting our lives at risk. Like it's not a fucking joke, man. So we were having this weird, what do you call it? Mutiny almost happen on our team. And I had to have a conversation with him, and this dude, the shift lead, had a really impressive military background, but he was old now, and I don't think he'd ever realized that he was getting old. Like he was in Special Operations Command, all this other cool shit, and I had to be the one to tell him like, you have to step down because this team is getting ripped in half. Like it's just not going to end well. Some of the things that you're doing are making us feel very unsafe. You know what I mean? And it's nothing against you, but we got to figure something else out. And that was that was one of the hardest conversations I had to have because of his illustrious career. Like how weird is that for him to get to the point where like, oh, this thing that I used to be so good at, I'm no longer good at? In the community of people that I've been surrounding myself with for like 30 fucking years. And now some 25-year-old kid is going to come up to me and tell me that I suck. You know what I mean? Like I was like, and like I said, half of the team was just like done. It was just getting so bad. And the way we had the conversation was as such where afterwards he came to my room and he thanked me. And I was so glad that that's how it ended. And he ended up leaving the team, and he took a job like in the head shed doing some fucking whatever bullshit in there. And he was happier that way. And then we got a new shift lead. You know what I mean? But like having to have conversations like that, it's easier to do because of the severity of the situation. Like if I'm overseas and there's a problem, we're going to fucking say something about it because it's our lives at stake. Like we're not fucking around. It's not like we're here and I don't have to give a shit. Like stuff gets addressed. But then back. And I also think that because of the severity of the situation, if you're on the other receiving end, it doesn't bother you as much because you are also aware of how severe the situation is. And you also want everybody else to be safe. But back home, it's just, it's not, I feel like people really shy away from having tough conversations. Now more than ever, I feel like, where people are just like, there's some things we just can't talk about.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's counterproductive. Were you going to say something, Brad?
I was. Actually, I thought of a tough conversation I had to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to have a conversation with he was the mass sergeant of the unit because I lied on my PFT.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. I was dude, I failed bad.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
you had a perfect score.
No, I didn't even. It was
the fastest guy ever.
No. I got 36 minutes or something, and the pass is 28, right?
Okay. Was it 2 mile, 3 mile?
It's 3 miles.
Okay, yeah.
And so I get to the end, and I'm like, hold a breath, right? Oh my god, 27:59, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, no fucking way, whatever, right? So they write it down.
They just ask you your time?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
It's like, how many push-ups did you do? 400.
42.
What the fuck?
Yeah, right.
All
So
right.
I just tell my time, right? And then they're like, okay. So they write it down, and then my gunny, later in the afternoon, the gunny calls me and he goes, "Hey, they know, right? They know.
Yeah.
You need to go talk to the mass sergeant and just go have a conversation and figure out why you did what you did, right?" So I go over there, and this dude was a drill instructor. He was the drill instructor in the video that they show you at boot camp to hype you up.
Yeah.
He was the drill instructor in that video. And
Literally?
literally.
Oh,
he was,
shit.
yeah, that was him.
Okay.
Right? This dude was a Marine's Marine, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he's had a serious conversation with me, and he was like, "Hey, Marines don't lie, Marines don't cheat, Marines don't steal," and gave me this huge conversation, talking like a man. It's you're going to get a man's punishment where I'm not going to promote you.
Right.
And you're getting on a promotion freeze, obviously. So
yeah.
and I was like, rightfully so. I should be getting demoted, and I should be in a lot of trouble for that. And I got very, very that was to have to go and tell him.
Well, people in positions of leadership in the military have to have tough conversations every fucking day.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an instructor of any kind, anything, that's literally what you do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I had a similar thing. So we had WLC, which was the course you would go to before you, or around the time you would become a sergeant. Could be before or after, but you go to WLC. And so in my class, I was at Camp Williams in just outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. And I finished at the top of my fucking class. And the E7, what do you call him? I guess lead instructor, brought me into his office, and he was like, "Okay, Peterson, you finish at the top of your class, with, and in the top, it was an average of things overall. It's not I was just killing it at everything, but overall I did well. And I passed my PT test, all that other stuff, but I've always been a bigger dude. I've always been a bigger guy." And so he just goes, "Listen, so you're at the top of the class, so you have to go in front of the board because you're up for Soldier of the Cycle." And I was like, "Okay." And he was like, "They're going to have you go up there and you're going to have to answer all these fucking questions and blah, 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 blah." And he goes, "But you're not going to get it." And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "You're not going to get it because you're flagged because you're overweight." And I was like, "Roger that." So can I just not do this then? Why do I have to live through this super awkward situation where I'm just going to get told I'm fat at the end of it? Come on, save me a fucking hour of my life. And he's like, "That's just what we're going to have to do." And I was like, "Okay." So I went up in front of the board, answered all the questions. They're like, "You're fucking fat." I was like, "Cool." And then I left.
What if at the end when they told you they were eating brownies, damn fat ass.
Yeah. God. So yeah, it's just if you're in a position of leadership, that sucks because you have to do that all the time.
And that's why I got out when I did.
Yeah.
Deuces.
Yeah. What about on the civilian side? What's one of the tougher conversations you've ever had to have?
Probably with a hospice nurse saying that my dad was gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mel?
Ooh, toughest. I think they're all relationship related, working through And like friendships too, like all the kinds of relationships, like working through conflicts or tough conversations. The first time you set boundaries with some people can be a really tough conversation.
That's such a important piece. Like, I feel like not necessarily a first step, but a beginning step in any relationship is having that little bit of confrontation or whatever that needs to be resolved by setting boundaries.
Yep.
Because it gives you like a better understanding of each other. And then it's almost like a little bit of, I don't know if it's a combination of conflict resolution and trauma bonding.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like it builds the relationship.
Yeah. And like I have teenagers, so I have tough conversations with them. Like, it's so hard to like, they're just so sensitive. And like you have to balance like making your point clear versus like making them not, get emotionally right. It's just a lot. It's a lot with teenagers.
It's a very thin line, it seems like.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like you said, that's really tough too. I mean, mine was probably similar in that it was the palliative care nurse, and I remember this like it was yesterday, and I'll remember it for the rest of my life because I felt like I was such an asshole to her because she was the first person that told me. She came to see me right when my mom first got into the hospital, but I don't think it was quite hospice yet. And she was just like, hey, we just need to talk about what this process looks like so you'll be aware. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I was mad, and I'm embarrassed by it. Like, it makes me really I'm just embarrassed with myself for how I handled that. And I didn't like yell at her, but I was like rude. Like, I was a dick about it. You know what I mean? And she was just doing her fucking best. And then throughout the course of my mom's time on hospice, like, that doctor was fucking amazing. She was like heart of fucking gold. She was young. You could tell that like she probably hadn't been doing this for very long. And she like really did an amazing job. And then I just couldn't stop. I couldn't help but like think about how insane of a job that is.
That's going to be tough.
Every day you're going to go tell family that their loved one's going to die. So you get 2 15-minute breaks. Like, enjoy it. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck?
How many cigarettes can you smoke in 15 minutes? Go.
Dude.
Yeah.
And
that's unreal.
That's to have those types of conversations are so hard.
It's
And also the ones that you can have with yourself. Like when holding yourself accountable for things. Like there are times when like when your kid does something and you're like, fuck, am I a bad parent? Like you think about it for a second. Like that's a tough conversation to have, to call yourself out on anything. Like for me, like it's kind of tough. You know what I mean? I don't know. But yeah, so research shows that avoiding difficult conversations can lead to things like stress, anxiety, strained relationships. So we're going to look at 10 insights as to how tough conversations connect to mental health. Number 1, emotional relief. So initiating tough conversations can alleviate the emotional burden of suppressing thoughts or feelings, leading to improved mental health and reduced stress. Sharing emotions openly fosters psychological relief and builds resilience. Number 2, improve relationships. Like we were talking about a minute ago, honest and constructive discussions can strengthen personal and professional relationships, reducing feelings of isolation and promoting mutual understanding. Number 3, reduced anxiety. Avoiding difficult conversations often increases anxiety and stress, while addressing issues directly helps mitigate these feelings. The act of addressing concerns fosters emotional regulation and lowers that stress hormone. Number 4, it combats stigma. So discussing mental health openly in tough conversations helps reduce societal stigma, encouraging others to seek help and promoting a culture of empathy and understanding. I love that.
What?
Yeah. I love that one. Well, it's like...
Isn't that what we're doing here?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Heck yeah.
I mean it. Like just... hanging out with a bunch of guys that look like they're fucking just mongoloids and talking about mental health. Just talking about how you're feeling.
Guys,
talking
guys
about
and
feelings
gals.
and shit. No, but I know. But what makes me laugh in my head is like some of the guys that I sit around with and we'll just talk to each other about how we're feeling. But it's just so funny because we just don't look like dudes that would talk about that shit.
Nope.
Like that. You know what I mean? I love that. I think you need to see more of that. Number 5, enhance problem solving. Difficult conversations often clarify misunderstandings and help develop collaborative solutions to complex issues, leading to a sense of control and empowerment. Number 6, workplace benefits. So in professional settings, tough conversations can create a supportive culture, reducing burnout and absenteeism while improving employee well-being. That's a tough one. I was just confronted with a very tough one of these. I don't know if I talked about it on here before, but I can speak freely about this because it's not an issue, but I have an employee at my job who has a service dog, and I have an employee at my job who has an allergy to a service dog. And we had to have a tough conversation about how we were going to deal with that. And you have two people who have something that they can't control. They have no, you know what I mean? Like, it's outside of their control, and we're all in the same place now, and we have to figure out, like, what do we have to do to make this work for all of us? And then obviously people start taking things very personally, because things have to change because of something involving you. Like, you feel like it's your fault, but it's not your fault. It's the situation that we found ourselves in. So then when that happens, then emotions start running high, and then it starts feeling tense. Like, those conversations are so tough. And in a workplace, it's so tough because sometimes the tough conversation doesn't just involve you and the person you're having it with. It affects everybody that's around when you hear tough conversations like that, like military and workplace alike, when you're kind of watching that stuff happen. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I definitely see how, because to get back to what I was talking about, since we've moved past that, we've figured it out together as a team. We all understand how much we were willing to do for each other. And so because of that, I feel like it's made us a little bit better, a little bit stronger. It's made communication a little bit better because we understand that we are actually looking out for each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Number 7, validation of feelings. So acknowledging someone's experiences and emotions during a tough conversation can help them feel seen and heard, which is vital for mental well-being. I'm working on that. I think that's a big thing, especially for husbands. Like, if your wife is telling you something about how they feel about something, like let them know that their feelings are valid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's something that I personally struggle with, that I know I need to work on. You know what I mean? And I feel like I've been working on, but number 8, skill building. So engaging in difficult discussions builds emotional intelligence and communication skills, fostering better coping mechanisms for stress and interpersonal challenges. Number 9, barriers to seeking help. So failing to initiate conversations about mental health can lead to delays in seeking help, exacerbating conditions such as depression or anxiety. And number 10, importance of timing and empathy. Choosing the right moment and maintaining an empathetic approach are critical for productive conversations. This ensures the discussion is constructive rather than triggering. So why are tough conversations so difficult? There is a fear of conflict, rejection, emotional overwhelm. Have either of you guys ever avoided a tough conversation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it?
Yeah. So it was after, so my son's 17. So, when you're 15, you kind of start to peak in your curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And I had found a bottle of alcohol in his closet. And that was really hard because I lost my mom to a drunk driver when I was 18. And so he knew that. And we'd had this conversation a million times. And so when my worst fear came true and I knew that we were going to have to talk about it, I wasn't looking forward to it because I didn't know if I could stay emotionally regulated.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, was the really challenging part. So I probably played the conversation out in my head 50 times before we actually had it. And that part was definitely worse. So when they talked earlier about just having the conversation, it's definitely way better. Just get it out there, get it over with, because you spend all that time preparing and anxious and you just need to have the talk.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Brad, what about you? Have you ever avoided a tough conversation?
Not that I can think of.
Trying to think too.
I can't think of anything like. I mean, I have tried very hard to avoid the conversation. Like I tried really hard to avoid the conversation with my doctor. So, like the one where you're blind conversation.
Yeah.
So I guess I avoided that one as long as I could.
Which brings up a good point, because it's like I avoided the conversation about my fucking mental health for like a long time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With doctors and stuff in the VA, you know? And I think, again, like when you get out, when you demob or whatever, we talked about it before, you talk to that doctor and they're like, you ever think about killing yourself? And you're like, nope. How many beers do you drink? No more than 2 over 4 hours or whatever you know what I mean?
Yep.
You just say whatever you got to say because you want to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be there anymore, but you're avoiding that tough conversation of telling them like, I drink a lot. I think about this. I think about that. You know what I mean?
It doesn't translate very well to the civilian world.
What do you mean?
That mentality doesn't translate very well to like just saying, yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
That doesn't translate.
Yeah.
Because you continue to do that and you stop, you know what I mean? Like you put off getting help and stuff. And
well, there's kind of like, you know, the military culture sometimes discourages like vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they can make having those conversations even harder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that difficult conversations or discussing tough conversations in relationships are also one of the most important things, like with your partner, with your girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife. And I think that's one of the best things about being married. Like the longer that you're married, I feel like those conversations are easier to have because you are getting better and better and better at communicating, and you've been communicating for X amount of years. So like a tough conversation, I don't have to put that much thought into it as I would a friend or somebody that I didn't know as well. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense. I don't know. Anyway, so preparing for a tough conversation, the first thing you should do is reflect on the purpose, clarify the goals. What do you want to achieve from the discussion? And I think this is important, especially, again, like arguing with your partner, thinking like, okay, what's the intent of this? Like, is this necessary? Is this worth it? I feel like every husband before they argue with their wife, like there's a little bulb that's just like, is it worth it?
Mm-hmm.
Really think about it. It's worth it. You know, like, but you have to know, like, what are you trying to achieve with this discussion?
Yeah.
You need to have some sort of end goal. Here are some questions you can ask yourself before having a difficult conversation with somebody. What's my purpose? What do I hope to accomplish with this? What would be an ideal outcome? Excuse me. What assumptions am I making? Are there any common concerns? And how have I contributed to the problem? I think that last one's really important. Because again, you got to try to take a little ownership if you can. You can't necessarily just think that it's all on somebody else if you're trying to have a tough conversation. I think that it opens it up a lot more to think about how you've contributed to the problem, because if you're going to have a difficult conversation with somebody, I think one of the first things that you can do to make it easier is admit how you may have contributed to the problem. You know what I mean? You're not just outwardly blaming someone else. You're like, hey, here's the situation and here was what I know I did wrong. You know what I mean? But it allows you to at least bridge that gap to start that conversation, I think. Next, you just have to know your audience. You have to understand the other person's perspective and potential reactions. And then you have to practice active listening. And this is really big. So focus on understanding rather than responding defensively. Studies show that active listening builds trust and reduces defensiveness. So active listening is a communication skill that involves fully concentrating, understanding, and responding to a speaker, ensuring that they feel genuinely heard and validated. It's not just about hearing words, but also about understanding the emotions and intent behind them, which I feel like is how we should just be listening all the time, right? Like, we should just listen to people like that.
But it's hard when you have like ADHD to hone in on that. Like really hard to hone in on that.
That's true. Key components of active listening include maintaining eye contact, using open body language, summarizing what has been said, and asking clarifying questions when necessary. Reflecting on both the content and emotions conveyed by the speaker helps foster a deeper connection and mutual understanding. Practicing active listening requires avoiding distractions, suspending judgment, and refraining from formulating responses while the speaker is still talking. All of those things I have to work refraining from formulating responses while the speaker is talking is one that I'm working on, because I do that a lot when I'm listening to somebody. But part of that's because I know I'm going to forget like this point that I want to make. And so like I just remembered now, when Melanie was talking earlier about her drill sergeants, there was something I wanted to say, which was, she described one of her drill sergeants, and I feel like everybody in fucking boot camp had that drill sergeant. It was a short, either Mexican and or Filipino drill sergeant who was just like wide as shit,
and terrifying.
But like little and terrifying. So I wanted to say that earlier, and so I started thinking about that. But then in that moment, I'm not listening to what's being said. I'm thinking about my response. But the only way that and one of the things that I do to work on that is that sometimes I'm trying to get better at it, but if I'm having a conversation or a meeting or something, is just having a notebook with me. And then I'll just make one bullet point, like just like one or two words to remind me. And then I can go right back to like paying attention. So like, I don't know if that's better or worse, but like that way I'm not taking so much time trying to commit it to memory. I'm just putting down a couple words and then I'm right back in the conversation again. You know what I mean? But I don't know. Mindfulness also plays a crucial role, as staying present and engaged in the moment allows for a more effective exchange of ideas and emotions. I love how happy you get whenever I say the word mindfulness.
because it's just
You're
like
excited.
in everything. I love it.
That's fine.
Just a little shoulder shuffle.
Yep.
The music's just in my head, guys.
What music?
No, don't.
Don't say it. Tell us.
No.
Is it Party in the USA? That's
No,
fine.
It's not. It's
Okay. Roar.
No, it's I believe in a thing called love.
Oh, that's a great one. Darkness.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's a great
I
song.
love that song.
Yeah,
that's
that's
what I
fine.
sing on my walk when I'm like when nobody's watching me. You know?
Yeah.
because I'm blind. So like I'm like, I believe in a thing called love.
I do think it's a good song.
Yeah.
The music video is fucking cool too. I don't know if you remember that.
You know.
Anyway,
That's-
barriers such as environmental distractions, preconceived biases, or psychological challenges like anxiety can hinder active listening, or ADHD, as Melanie mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But with practice, these skills can be enhanced significantly. I think that the active listening is where like so much gets lost in translation and conversations and things, because people are not actively listening to each other. And I realize that again, and I use the topic of marriage because that's what I can relate to. I really realize that whenever my wife and I are having a tough conversation, argument, whatever, if I am actively listening, it is definitely a better outcome. You know what I mean? Like getting to the outcome.
yeah.
Because I'm not getting emotional. I'm not giving myself the attention and chance to get emotional. I'm just listening to this other person just like get it all out there.
Yeah.
And then again, like as a husband, it's hard because sometimes, you know, like I think guys are like, fixers and stuff. Like you want to fix things. And so you're thinking about all these things that you could do to fix this or help with this. But really that person just wants to be heard. That person, you just need to sit there and fucking listen to them and like really listen to them.
I feel like Mel's face right now is like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
She's like, no shit.
I get it. I know it. Like,
Yeah.
it should be simple, but for me, I didn't know about active listening for like a while. I didn't understand what it really meant to like let somebody be heard. I just didn't know that. I didn't know that. You know what I mean? So I get it now. I feel like I get it, you know? And then the last thing is I'd mentioned ground yourself emotionally. Techniques like deep breathing, mindfulness, all help manage anxiety before the conversation.
Peace and mindfulness.
I know. I was waiting.
Dance. And so now let's get to how to navigate that tough conversation. So the first thing, start with empathy and respect. Acknowledge the difficulty of the conversation and express care for the relationship. don't sugarcoat shit. Like, I definitely agree. If you're going to have a hard conversation, let them know
Yeah.
it's going to be a hard conversation. When I worked at CertaPro, and like my boss, Rob, would tell you this, anytime something was fucked up on a job or whatever, I would call him. And when I had to, because I was the production manager and he's the owner, so I had to tell him what was going on all the time if something was messed up. And I would always tell him, like, I got bad news and good news. And I would start every conversation like that, and he would just like sigh, and he would be like, all right, what's the bad news? And I'd be like, good news is it's a beautiful day outside. Like, I would say some dumb shit, and he would almost always like fucking laugh or something, which would help me tell him this bad shit a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, it helped me get into the conversation. And ever since then, like, I do that all the time if I have to give bad news or have a tough conversation. Not all, situation dictates, but like, I will tell somebody, like, I got good news and I got bad news. Which do you want to hear first? And no matter what they say, I would be like, good news is, and I'm going to say some dumb shit that just doesn't fucking matter at all. You know what I mean? So, and then I always, like with the workplace thing, I told everybody, this is going to be hard. This conversation is going to be very difficult for all of us, because people feel like it's it's personal, but it's not. You know, it's a lot of things here that we're trying to figure out. Like, and it's going to be tough, and we're all working through it together. But it's not going to be easy, and the solution is going to be rocky, I'm sure, but we will figure it out. But I always appreciate somebody letting me know where stuff stands. I would way rather you tell me, like, hey, we got to talk about something. It's going to be kind of tough, but we need to talk about this, than like you just coming out of nowhere, like, hey, your mom's going to go on hospice. Like, what, dude? I'm eating a hot dog. Like, what the fuck? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you got to lead somebody into that shit. Also, you can use I statements. So focus on your own feelings and experience instead of blaming somebody else. Like, for example, I feel stressed when this happens, instead of you always do this. On the other hand, in a team environment, when there's a few factors and it's maybe more than just one person, I like to use we. Like, when I'm trying to solve an issue, I don't want anyone to think that it's like their specific problem or fault necessarily. Depending on the situation, I'll say things like, hey guys, we are making mistakes with this. We need to get better at this, because then it's like, I'm also trying to acknowledge that I'm a part of this. Like, we all need to work on this. It's not like Brad needs to work on this. You know what I mean? Yeah. Also, stay on topic. Avoid bringing up unrelated issues that could derail the conversation. I'm going to say it again. Avoid bringing up unrelated issues that could derail the conversation. I'm saying this for my wife mostly.
Oh, I was like, why are you looking at me and saying that?
Oh, no.
So I don't have to feel guilty then. Well, never mind then.
How often does that happen? You're having a tough conversation about something, and then somebody drops this little like emotional string for the other person to grab onto and be like, no, like, just you say something that doesn't really have to do with what we need to talk about, just to kind of derail the conversation. Like, I've heard a lot of conversation. Like, I was in a conversation at a previous job where we were talking out some sort of problem between myself and one of the other employees. And it was between two other employees, and they were arguing about something. And as they were arguing about something, another employee made a comment to like clarify one of the things that they were saying to each other as being like an incorrect statement. I'm like, that's not fucking helping right now. Like, why would you do that? Like, why would you do that? Like, just knowing that, like, you know what I mean? Be a point shitter in somebody else's argument. Like, nobody's gonna be like, oh, thank you for that. You know what I mean? Like, you solved the fucking problem. So yeah, avoid bringing up unrelated issues that could derail the conversation. Number 4, acknowledge, validate. Reflect the other person's feelings back to them. So saying like, I can see how this situation is frustrating you. And then set boundaries if needed. If emotions escalate, agree to revisit the conversation when calmer. That's another thing that I like too. Like, if you know that this isn't going to be a productive conversation, just agree to be like, all right, can we just take a break and like come back to this in an hour tomorrow morning whatever. Like, again, I've talked about how in the book Emotional Awareness by Dr. Paul Ekman, where it's just conversations with him and the Dalai Lama, how Dr. Ekman says that, like, when he would get into arguments with his wife, he would, if it was a bad argument or just an emotionally charged argument, they would take a break for the night, and then he would go and he would write all of his feelings down and how he felt about the situation. And then he would wait until the next day and he would read it. And if he still felt that way, he would give the letter to his wife. And if he didn't, he would make changes or whatever. And most of the time he would throw it away. You know what I mean? Like he would, because it wouldn't feel that way the next day when he was like a little bit more calm. Or he could at least have a more productive conversation the next day because he wasn't so emotionally charged anymore. It was just going to be a better conversation. But that's hard because if you're on the other side of that and you want to keep having that conversation, sometimes it can be hard to like hit the pause button. Mm-hmm. So it's like if somebody's telling you that, you have to try to validate that and understand and say, okay, yeah, I'm going to try to just put this aside and take a pause for a little bit, you know? So some stories. What other times can you think of, where you had to just have a really tough conversation after everything else that we've said? Did it jog any other memories for you guys? No tough conversations. Fuck yeah. Killing it.
I think telling my kids that their grandpa was going to pass away.
Having to tell, yeah.
That was tough.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's a really good point, or that's a good example. I brought Lily to a park. This is my move for some reason, because every time Ashley has like lost somebody in her life and I found out before Ashley, I would take her to go get some ice cream and we would like go park somewhere and then I would tell her there. And I did the same thing with Lily. Like when I had to tell her that her Lola was passing away, I took her to get ice cream. We went to the park and then I told her, and like it was, and we've talked about this before, like at her age, she was, I think 4 or 5 at the time. She didn't understand at first, and then she did. And when she understood, she started bawling, asking me all these questions. And the questions that she's asking is breaking your fucking heart, so you're fucking bawling now. But then like afterwards, like we both felt a little bit better because we had this conversation together. You know what I mean? Is that how it was like for you when you talked to your kids about your dad?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. It's really hard to have those conversations for sure.
It's tough.
I think that being a private investigator helped me out with having tough conversations the most. Because, well, I don't know. I feel pretty comfortable with like conflict resolution and having tough conversations for the most part. Like most jobs that I've had, I don't know. I don't know if it's, I don't know why that is, but like being a private investigator really honed that in because I had to investigate high value claims for insurance companies. So these people are making a lot of money, and which means these people have really good jobs and are probably most likely really fucking smart. So like, I'm not going to pull one over on a CEO or a fucking medical director of some hospital. You know what I mean? So like to have tough conversations about something that debilitated them, the most vulnerable thing to ever happen in their life, which is why I'm investigating this. Like the only way I could have those conversations productively and constructively was just by being very open and honest. And like, honestly, like the military background stuff helped a little bit, establish like some trust and professionalism. And I wouldn't sugarcoat anything. And I would kind of get straight to the point about things. And again, all those things, like I would really listen to them, make the eye contact with them, really learn how to pick up on people's body posture, language, tone, everything. And that like kind of helped me, I think, sharpen the tools the most. Like the military helped for sure because of the types of tough conversations you have to have. And depending on the life you had before that, you might not have ever had to have conversations like that. But yeah, I realized after being a private investigator, how much I really think it helped me with a lot of it just affected a lot of other areas of my life. So how do you guys think that veterans can set boundaries in conversations with people that have differing views about military service or politics that doesn't involve like throwing them out of the back of your truck or something?
I think you just make an agreement early on to how you're going to interact and behave, kind of regardless. Like, hey, like we can have this conversation, but if it reaches X amount of whatever you feel, whatever, we're gonna close this out and move on to something else. So I think setting the rules before engagement is probably a good idea.
Yeah. Like, and I've talked about this, doing like a presentation somewhere. When you come home as a veteran and they're burning the flag, okay, there are those people that get like super amped up about it. And hey, they had their experience. I don't know what their experience is. Hey, they might, you know what I mean? My experience though is that like if one of my friends died, they got covered in that. So that kind of means, you know what I mean? Like there's a sacred element to it because it's the reason why these people signed up, and it's the last thing that covers their body when they're fucking dead. So there is some importance there. Now, if you feel like you have to destroy it because a group of people or whoever that you care about is being just objectified or just whatever is happening to them, and it's causing such pain, and your experience is so heavy and just full of just this hate and anger that you feel like you have to do that, like, I understand the logic that you have to do that, but just know that because that's not my experience and I feel this other way about it, I'm not going to be angry at you for doing it, but I want to talk to you about it. I want you to understand why I feel the way that I feel. You help me understand the way you feel that way. And like, we have to talk this stuff out. Otherwise, we're just going to continue being pressure cookers and like pointing fingers at the other side and just hating on this other person because they don't believe what I believe. Well, it's like they had a fucking different experience. We're never going to know that if we don't fucking talk to them. You know what I mean?
That's the problem.
What's that?
I said that's the problem. Nobody talks to anybody. Nobody cares to ask anybody any questions or anything.
Whenever I think about groups of people, politics, race, religion, anything I stay away from is people that are discouraging others from reading or talking about things.
Yeah.
Like those are the ones that I'm like, I'm probably not fucking listening to that person.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So some things that you can do after you've had that tough conversation. The first thing is reflect and process. Do an AAR, after action review. What went well? What could have gone better? It's always good to take that moment, I think, to have that bit of reflection, because that's going to help you for the next one. Like it's important for me to kind of sit and reflect on things like that, especially after a really, really heavy, tough conversation with somebody. The next thing is to follow up. If agreements were made, revisit them to ensure that they're being followed through. And then seek support if needed. Resources like therapy or peer support can help unpack lingering feelings. What role do you guys think that forgiveness plays in resolving tough conversations in relationships?
I think forgiveness is more of a self-healing thing. For the most part, people forgive for themselves more than they do for the other person.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah,
at least in my experiences with having to like truly forgive somebody,
because that's controlling what you can control.
Yeah,
you know, that's all you can control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. That was a good answer.
Thanks, dude.
Very insightful, Brad.
Yeah.
See, that's what happens. My two eyes close, so my third eye opens.
It took me a second to catch that one.
Good job.
What?
Very insightful.
Brad.
So, wrap this up while Brad thinks about that. We talked about tough conversations, having tough conversations. The ability to do that is absolutely a skill. Did you get it? You got it. You got it. Insightful. Being able to have tough conversations is a skill that can be learned and improved upon. Preparation, empathy, and active listening are essential tools. And to Brad's point, I do agree. If you're going to have a tough conversation, a good thing to say to yourself, at least beforehand, is like, I might need to understand that I might need to have a level of forgiveness ready before I have this conversation if I really want to be able to actively listen to this other person.
And that's a lot easier said than done.
Oh, for
you don't
sure.
you don't just like have forgiveness. Like
you have to think about it.
Yeah.
But you have to think about it so you can do it. Like you might not just naturally do it.
Yeah.
Like I have to think. I have to stop myself for a second and be like, oh, I'm doing this wrong. I need to work on that. You know what I mean? And that is very hard. It definitely takes a lot of work. So if you are listening to this, definitely try to have one meaningful, tough conversation in the next coming weeks. If you can, especially with the holidays, don't worry. There's plenty of success stories and plenty of people that have struggled. And if you have already, feel free to reach out to us on our Facebook page, the I'm F.I.N.E podcast, or on Project Headspace and Timing's website. Some other resources. There's a book, Difficult Conversations, How to Discuss What Matters Most by Douglas Stone that you can also check out. But other than that, is there anything else that you guys have to say about having tough conversations?
I have to have a tough conversation with Brad about how I'm not going to be able to drive him home. He's going to have to walk.
He walked 3 miles earlier today.
I know.
He'll be fine.
He'll be all right.
I'll be okay.
He's very insightful.
I'm insightful.
Tough conversations.
Thanks for being here again, Mel.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you very much.
Yes.
And also, too, if you know of any female veterans, Mel is running with Kristen Rubio, Veiled Valor, all-female veteran outreach group under the Project Headspace and Timing umbrella. And they just went to go see the Nutcracker.
Yes. And then
That's
we went
pretty
out and had a really awesome dinner. So, yeah, it's fun.
I want to get everybody together and go to a rage room.
Oh, that
Again
was so
soon.
fun.
The rage room that you guys went to,
Yeah.
was that the one where there was axe throwing and then there was like 4 rage rooms in the back? That's the one we should go to. I got to figure out, because Ashley and I went to that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 45 minutes away or something like that.
It's such a great way to get out that energy.
Oh my God. Yeah. So definitely check out Veiled Valor. They do a lot of really cool stuff with female veterans in our area in Kankakee and surrounding counties. But other than that, it's fun. We did it again.
Always.
We did a great job,
guys.
I appreciate you both very much.
Yep.
Thank you again for listening. And again, we hope that we helped you go from being freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional to truly being fine about having tough conversations.